Hello, and welcome to this Paychex Special Edition video podcast. I'm Rob Parsons, live from the show floor here at HR Tech 2024. I'm here today with Zack Johnson from Visier and Josh Carty from Paychex. As VP and GM of Embedded Analytics, Zack helps the world's leading HCM vendors and service providers build winning people analytics applications to help businesses unlock value for their customers through their people data. Josh Carty is an accomplished HR professional with over 15 years of human resources experience. He currently leads a strategy team within Paychex with the purpose of increasing the adoption rate of HCM amongst businesses and their people. Zack, Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Walking the show floor, there's been a lot of buzz, a lot of excitement. What trends are you seeing? What's interesting this year to you?
Oh man, so first off, this is like my favorite week of the year. It's like my 9th HR Tech, and there's so much cool stuff happening. I would be goofy if I didn't start with AI. There's AI everywhere. There's lots of AI. But what's exciting to see is really an emphasis on just super practical applications to just make lives better for people who run businesses. And so I'm seeing that across the market, whether you're talking about pre-hire, post-hire, managed services, straight up software as a service. So there's a lot of investment happening in that area. And also there's some new faces here, like Microsoft is like everywhere. And I see people from the work tech space leaning in, particularly on the tailwinds of some of this AI. So that's thing number one. Thing number two, the categories of HR are getting more confusing. Once upon a time, a talent management vendor was a talent management vendor. An applicant tracking system did applicant tracking. But everyone I've talked to is either moving up the stack, down the stack, side to side across the stack. And it's exciting because there's so many new developments, but it is also a little confusing to navigate. So it's something for customers to watch out for when they're buying and make sure that they're covering their needs, because the old applications you used to expect when you grab a particular suite might not be the same anymore. So those would be two of mine.
Josh, what have you seen on the show floor? Anything interesting in your perspective?
Oh my God, everything is interesting. I love the vibe, so many HR professionals coming together and just wanting to learn more about what technology can do for them. It's been an amazing experience. And by the way, it is HR Professionals Day, so this is quite the treat, right? To be at such an event with all these HR leaders and thought leaders, professionals, everything. So I'm loving it. I love the conversations, interactions we're having with people, the attendees, getting to understand what they're looking for, what their needs are. And a lot of them are looking to have a better understanding of AI, right? That's one thing. It's here, as Zack mentioned, it's here to stay. And, it's there to help businesses. It's there to help the HR professionals accomplish more in their roles. And so that's what excites me the most about what I'm seeing. And I think with all of these vendors, when I look around at their signs, when I go to different booths and they're speaking with us, and I'm overhearing conversations they're having with people that visit their booth, it's pretty common. You can tell that they are listening to what the customer's needs are, right? That's why they're coming and showing off all the wonderful solutions that they have. I love the Visier booth and how interactive it is, and just everything they're talking about when it comes to analytics and HR professionals being able to take those analytics and really take those insights and turn them into action. It's just a great time.
It's got to be so important now, too, with the changing workforce, being able to understand and get actual real insights. I know, Josh, we've talked a lot about that multi-generational workforce and the demands it's putting on businesses to adapt. We know there's business competition challenges. Tell me a little bit about the workforce and what you're seeing there.
Well, here's one thing we're seeing, Rob. 5 generations. Five generations in the workplace nowadays. That is insane. That is so wonderful. What I like about that? There's this blend of different cultures and unique experiences and ideas that are brought to the table with companies so that they could continue to innovate and evolve, right, with all those different perspectives from the various generations. So I appreciate that. And I think when it comes to, let's talk about millennials and let's talk about Gen Z, right? So when you think about those two, they're pretty unique. And with those two generations, technology is what they know, it's what they embrace. And if you think about their everyday lives, technology is always in their hand.
Yes.
And it does a lot for them, right? So now if I go to work, I want technology to do the same for me at work. And that's the thing with those two generations, okay? I want technology to simplify the task that I need to get done so I can complete the goals and objectives that are assigned to me. That's really what it's about. And businesses need to understand that technology will help them get the most out of their workforce, okay? If I have an AI tool, that's there with me, that I can ask it questions and tell it to give me certain insights, and then from that, I'm able to make effective, critical thinking, advanced problems that I can solve because of the insights from the technology. I'm going to be more effective as an HR professional. So, millennials, Gen Z, understand their needs, right? Technology is key for them. Have technology that works for them, because it only helps your business. I would also say when it comes to, you mentioned about like new hires and things like that and talent acquisition, right, Zach? So when I think about like a new hire process, can you imagine companies that hire Gen Z into the workplace and they have a paper stack of physical new hire forms and give a pen to that person and expect them to be able to fill it all out? I can't. My handwriting's not great. And I don't like hand cramps, right? So give me something in technology that I can fill out right on my phone. I can fill out my new hire paperwork. It's seamless, it's simpler, it's easier. There's less risk of losing the data like you would if you had a physical document. And so, yeah, I just think technology is the key thing for these two generations.
It is exciting. And Zach, you might be able to lend some perspective too, especially with Visier and AI, how the tools are unlocking technology maybe for folks my age who aren't as naturally adept with the technology. Tell me what you're seeing there and how Visier is helping.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think one of the things that's really interesting is like everybody, no matter their age or where they're from, likes to experience and do work their own way. And every company, like there's a very big difference between a day-to-day life when you're at a restaurant versus when you're like a tax accountant, right? But one of the things that's interesting about AI that's exciting for me is most people know how to talk to another person. And that conversational element totally changes it. So with analytics, there's been a lot of barriers to bring analytics at scale, particularly to larger companies. But one of the big ones has been you need an analyst to understand a data model. You got to know what everything means. And it's sort of like you got to know what to look for to even ask the question. Now, when you can just like ask an LLM that has been trained against the data model, you can say the wrong words and still get to the right data because it infers and understands. And so whether you're like, 18 years old and you've been using ChatGPT for like 2 years, or like, you're 65, having a conversation is very natural and fluid, and the form factor is evolving quite quickly.
It's exciting. I've used some of the tools, and it's almost like having a coworker and not necessarily a piece of technology that I have to learn and adapt to.
Do you say please and thank you when you write it?
I tend to be polite. I want the AI to treat me nice in the future.
I do the same thing. Yeah. I haven't gotten over that yet.
So let's talk about some use cases, Zach. Let's talk about compensation and how Visier, particularly in the context of the Paychex HR analytics, how does compensation strategies, how they've been evolving, and how's Visier helping that evolution happen, and how's it impacting it?
So I think like, if I had to sum it up in one sentence, it's democratizing what's historically been very gate-kept data, so that anybody running a business can at least have like some yardstick to use when they're making the most important work decision, which is how do you spend your money, right? And how do you pay people fairly, and how do you pay for performance, and how do you keep people, right? And historically, if you look at the comp market, it's been very much geared towards an enterprise buyer. You have like a total rewards and comp team, which tends to coexist by talent management. You have a bunch of vendors who've very much focused on this market for a long time. They sell expensive survey data. The survey data tends to be like 18 months old, which is kind of tough in a high inflation or inflation changing environment, right? And it's something that like, I remember back when I ran a small business, like I would hit up friends and be like, so what do you pay for this role? What do you do? And like, it's all anecdotal. But when you have thousands and thousands of customers on a unified data model, especially with the daily data feeds that they provide to be able to power analytics, you can actually start to get a real good sense of what do people pay for certain jobs. And the thing is, at a really big company, if you get this wrong, yeah, it hurts the budget. But if you run like a landscaping company or like a coffee shop, and you get pay wrong, your business might not survive, right? And so this is something we're really passionate about, not just having the technology, but democratizing it, making it accessible, making it easy to use for businesses of all shapes and sizes.
That is such a big deal. And you touched on it a little bit, Zach. Josh, what have you seen in terms of that competitive environment? We know talent is a challenge for companies. Knowing what to pay, what you should pay, has got to be really important.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's still a high demand job market, and so Zach, hit it on the nail. We, especially smaller businesses, right? They don't have all the resources, like you mentioned, having a huge comp team, to really have the time and resources dedicated to do all the research and find all the information about, competitive pay and things like that. So again, technology, right? I do appreciate that, there's analytical tools that can be leveraged to get you that information faster, especially if you have AI on top of that. Then, just ask the tool and it just tells you exactly what you need to know, especially if you need to know it instantly, you need to hire fast. That's the best route to take. But there's things they can do, right? I think the first thing businesses need to do is look in your own house. Know what you're paying first. Within your own house, know your averages, right? Know your own pay structure internally, because it'll help you compare what the market is paying out externally, right? And so, and depending on the role that you're looking for, you could always start small. You can start with things like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I guess, right? Where it's like, this is a start. This gives me some data. To Zach's point, it's not the most updated information. We definitely understand that, right? But this is if you don't have an analytical tool that's going to be able to get that information to you. You can still get information. It just takes longer to get it. Another thing, hey, if you're small, right? We're going to talk about smaller companies, and you don't have an HR suite. You have an HR department of one, right? Who's doing everything. Hey, you want to, have an external consultant at times, kind of help you through some of that data, right? HR business partners here at Paychex, what we appreciate about them is they're the ones that have the resources, that can find the information, get it back to those small businesses so that they can have the information they need, the insights they need, so they can make decisions on how to pay people.
You touched on the time savings, and Zach, I want to explore that a little bit. How am I going to learn a new tool? I don't have time to bring on HR analytics. I don't have time for AI. There's got to be a way around that. You've got to be talking to people saying, no. It's easier than you think. And when you have that time back, here's what you can do.
Oh, totally. And I mean, the thing is, like, whether you're running a super tiny business or a super large business, we're all responsible for a lot, right? You got to know your product, know your customers, know your sales pipeline, especially when it's really small, like you're managing like a lease and you're paying taxes and all these things. And the number one thing you don't have is time. But everyone expects you to be an expert and everything's trying to kill you the whole time, right? Analytics are so powerful because they allow you to answer super annoying questions that sometimes seem really easy, like that. So to give an example, I remember back when I ran a small business, I had about 20 people, and I was trying to figure out, when did I last give somebody a raise? Now, I didn't really have an HR department. So I'm like, well, let me look at like my bank draft. And it's like, well, there's this giant expense that comes out, but I couldn't see the granularity. And I'm like, okay. And I found myself for 4 hours shifting through pay stubs. And I'm like, what is this? That's like one button click with the technology in Paychex today, right?
Yeah.
Like, because you can see employee history, which is actually a super complex technical problem, but simple for a user. You click a button and you see how every attribute about that person's changed over time. Now, the AI stuff makes it easier too. But what's crazy is like, it's those nights and weekends moments, right? Because especially if you're doing a job where you're doing the real work, like selling, delivering, building, whatever you're doing during the day, the last thing you have time to do is to like mess with pivot tables in Excel. And not everybody's comfortable with that work. So to have curated analytics that tell you the things you need to look at in a clear and easy to understand way with annotated help, and then also that Q&A functionality, it gives people their lives back, which is really important, something we're very passionate about.
That was awesome. Awesome. So Josh, where does the human element come into play then? It's analytics, give me all the answers. What's the human factor?
I mean, they make sense of it all. I think when it comes to the human element, there's so many things. AI is wonderful. It's a great tool, right? And it's going to take away some of those tedious tasks, especially the research, right? It's going to take a lot of that away because, hey, it's got the answer for you. So what does that do for me as an HR professional? Well, then I can start making decisions. And I think that's the key thing right there, right? So when you think of any HR professional here, they're accomplished, they're experienced in this role, they love HR, and now what you're saying is, let's use your skills, right? Let's use your skills on understanding human resources, understanding workforce management, by giving you a tool that's going to take some of those administrative tasks away from you so that you can have more productivity time back and dedicated to being more strategic, right? Or making a larger impact to the way the workforce is managed, And so I do like how AI can be an assistant really to an HR professional,
Right.
It's something where it's welcomed, and real quick, I think of I like Marvel, so I'm just gonna go there for a minute. So Tony Stark, he has Jarvis in his helmet, right?
Yes.
his AI tool helped him in so many different situations, right? Just giving him the information he needs so that he can do what he does best, and save the world, right? So that's kind of what we want to do in HR. We want to save the world, and so we can accomplish that. We have more time to accomplish that when we have a tool that's in our pocket that's able to get rid of those tedious tasks so that we can move forward.
That's great.
You mind if I add something to that?
Please do, Zach.
Because I've been working on this exact thing for 18 years, right? And to me, what's so exciting, and the reason why I got into people analytics in the first place is intuition and wisdom's powerful. Data's powerful. Alone, though, they're both very flawed. Together, they're so powerful, right? Because you see a number, but that doesn't tell you what your risk tolerance is. Right? That's a human decision. One of the challenging things being an HR professional or an owner-operator is you constantly have to make risk calls, right? There aren't always black and white answers or there wouldn't be a job. And so it's almost always the next step is picking up the phone and learning more. Or you have the context to be able to understand why that data is happening. And so I find that really good operators are good at both. And I don't think you're ever going to take the human element out of management. But I do think it's going to change a lot as more people are empowered with things that maybe they were less comfortable with or weaker on, and that really becomes something that everybody has access to.
Yeah, it's interesting too because one of my good colleagues, Brenton, he did a little research and he had an interesting stat that he found, and it has to do with HR professionals. According to BLS, or Bureau of Labor Statistics, their data shows that the average pay for or salary for an HR manager is around $80,000 a year, right? So we also did a little bit more research, and he also found that it takes roughly 20 minutes without a powerful AI or analytical tool. It takes roughly 20 minutes to develop an insight from analytics, single insight. And so why is that important? If you consider that salary, that annual salary, and you break it down to find one analytic tool or one insight, in a span of 20 minutes, you're spending roughly $20 per an insight that you found, right? And so all the effort and time for that, and it's crazy because even with AI, it's going to return tons of insights for you in a matter of moments, right?
Yeah.
All you have to do is ask a question, and the questions to ask. That's amazing about the human element, right? We know what we're asking, so we can ask AI, and the best thing about AI is that it can give us the answer that we're looking for. So just wanted to share that interesting little stat there.
It is an interesting
Thanks,
stat.
Brenton. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
All right, Zach, I have a last question.
Sure thing.
I want to tap into your experience with Visier, but also your experience as a business owner. What are the top 3 things you would recommend business leaders do to become a talent-first organization? A place where people want to work.
First, write down your values. And your values aren't things that are decent behavior. Values are what you don't do. And it's the things that you choose to stick with even when it's difficult. But I think when a company's aligned on values, it becomes a filter for all the decisions you make. And the hardest days are when there's no right answer, the values dictate it, right? That's thing number 1. Thing number 2 is businesses grow a lot of hair over time, right? Problems, they tend to compound. It's important to there's things you check when you need it, but there's also proactive work. And I really feel like if you're going to be like a talent first organization, you do have to go to the data occasionally and say, how do I pay my people? Have I made any mistakes I should rectify? Because those mistakes, if they pop up and you didn't prompt it, usually means you have a big problem. If you catch it, you build trust, right? And then the last one is you just have to be externally focused, whether it's talking to the people who run similar businesses, trying to recruit great talent, getting feedback in the marketplace. Businesses that spend more time in the outside world than the inside worlds are way better it's way better culture, and they get way better outcomes.
That's super interesting. That's a great answer.
Thank you.
Zach, Josh, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
It's my pleasure.
For sure.
This was great.
Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners. As always, please stay happy and healthy.